Have you all heard? There are rumors online that 90% of people across the country are dissatisfied with the current situation. 500 million people have chosen to lie flat. 800 million people are heavily in debt. And 19% of young people are unemployed. Many have even given up completely, with no hope left for the future. Is this true? If it is, what has caused the situation we're facing today? These two young men are both university graduates. One studied animation design and the other studied engineering design. Now, they're working in the manufacturing industry doing basic loading and unloading jobs, general labor work. Friends, having a job is already a good thing. Don't be too picky. Especially for young people who have just graduated, like these guys. 23 or 24 years old, just in their 20s. Just stepping into society. No matter whether the job is high-end or low-end. Find a job first. Many young people feel ashamed, thinking, I have a university degree, and now I'm working a job that only pays 3,000 to 4,000 yuan a month. They feel it's beneath them, but in today's tough job market, employment pressure is very high.
The escalating tensions between the United States and China have extended beyond the economic sphere, permeating social, cultural, and geopolitical domains, with profound consequences for both nations and the global community. From the expulsion of nearly 40,000 Chinese immigrants and the revocation of visas for hundreds of students, to a brutal tariff war that has crippled China's manufacturing sector, ordinary citizens are bearing the brunt of this conflict. Meanwhile, China's $700 billion zero-cents counterfeit streaming empire, the rampant proliferation of fake goods, and systemic social issues, such as ambulances being blocked and landlords sabotaging renovation projects out of desperation, reflect a nation struggling with internal decline. The Chinese Communist Party is facing growing criticism, with citizens blaming President Xi Jinping for accelerating the country's deterioration. Moreover, shocking revelations about Chinese mercenaries being recruited to fight in Russia further underscore the depth of China's economic desperation.
Finding a job is truly overwhelming. Today, I went to interview at a company. Initially, they told me there would only be one round of interviews. However, it turned out that it wasn't just the HR interview. After HR, I also had to meet with the foreign trade supervisor. After that, they told me to wait for further notice. Later, they asked me to return again today, because the boss also wanted to interview me. During this interview, the boss asked me between 50 and 60 questions. Extremely detailed and specific ones. Afterward, when I inquired about the outcome, they said I would have to wait until after tomorrow to find out. I just don't understand. Why make the interview process so complicated? Why didn't they tell me in advance that there would be 3 rounds? When I asked during the initial phone call about the number of interview rounds, why didn't they answer me truthfully? Today's 3rd round interview was honestly the longest and most exhausting one I have ever experienced. I've never been asked so many questions in a single interview. Not 5, not 6, not even 10, but more than 50. I spent nearly a full hour answering nonstop. And yet, the company isn't even that big. The factory probably employs about 100 people, with only 3 or 4 staff members in the sales department. I really don't understand why the boss needed to ask so many questions. It's not just today's interview that's breaking me down. I have been job hunting for a long time now. I only graduated 2 years ago, and I still lack extensive work experience. Yet it feels like they expect someone who has graduated 2 years ago to somehow possess 3 to 5 years of experience. This whole job search process has been truly exhausting and has severely shaken my confidence. I've already cried for an hour. Normally, I'm a strong person, but today was just too overwhelming.
Economic protests, a wave of outrage on the streets. The economic downturn has not remained confined to statistical reports. It has spilled onto the streets, with economic protests reaching record levels. According to Freedom House's China Dissent Monitor, the number of economic protests in Q4 2024 increased by 41% compared to the same period the previous year, the highest since data collection began in 2022. These protests, often led by unemployed workers, laborers owed wages, or investors who lost money in the real estate market, reflect the growing public anger. Although these demonstrations have not yet posed a direct threat to the CCP's grip on power, they highlight escalating social tensions. A report from QuanCube Technology shows that job vacancies in China dropped by 30% in early 2025. Meanwhile, Goldman Sachs estimates that around 20 million workers, nearly 3% of the workforce, are directly dependent on exports to the U.S. and are now facing the risk of unemployment. This has fueled instability, with protests expected to intensify as the full impact of U.S. tariffs is felt. Trade war, the collapse of the export sector. The U.S.-China trade war has pushed China's export sector, the main engine of its economy, to the brink of collapse. With U.S. tariffs now at 145% and China's retaliatory tariffs at 125%, exports to the U.S., China's largest market, have plummeted, with some industries like electronics and textiles nearing zero exports. Key export provinces such as Guangdong, Jiangsu, and Shandong are witnessing severe decline. In Xi'an, a major export hub, factories report an 80–90% drop in U.S. orders, leading to stockpiles of unsold goods and forcing many businesses to shut down or reduce working hours. Economist Zhao Zherong of Peking University described China as being caught between the cracks, facing pressure from advanced economies with superior technology and finance, while simultaneously battling low-cost competition from emerging markets like India, Vietnam, and Eastern Europe. Zhao posed a critical question: should we continue this battle? With rising production costs and weak innovation capacity, Zhao fears that China's manufacturing sector will struggle to remain competitive. Even the most optimistic forecasts predict a 10–15% decline in Chinese exports in 2025, with sectors like electromechanical goods, clothing, footwear, and household appliances among the hardest hit. Efforts to redirect exports to other markets are proving unfeasible, as domestic demand in regions like Europe and Asia has already saturated. This raises the risk of a price war as Chinese goods flood into these markets, further deepening the crisis as companies are forced to sell below cost, driving prices and profit margins even lower.
I am a liberal arts master's graduate of the class of 2025. From last year's fall recruitment season to this year's spring recruitment, all the way up to around April, I still haven't been able to find a job. I've sent out about 8,000 resumes and attended every recruitment fair during the fall season. Maybe it's because of my age, or maybe it's a combination of factors. It just seems that finding a job as a liberal arts master's graduate is incredibly difficult. I don't know if it's because the overall environment is bad, or if it's something wrong with me personally. During my time as a graduate student, I worked hard. I won several national scholarships, won various academic and design awards, and participated in provincial government design projects under my advisor. But now, after graduation, I still can't find a job. My parents have invested so much in me over the years, so much silent cost. And now I feel so ashamed to face them. I don't even dare to contact my parents anymore. At this point, I'm willing to take any kind of job. But it's just so hard. I feel anxious every day and can't sleep at night. I try to keep myself busy just to survive the days. It feels like my whole life might be ruined already. Every day, the anxiety just builds up, and I have no one to talk to about it. The only place where I can open up a little is here, on the internet. Over there, for the bigger places, at least 7 to 8 million are lost. On this street alone, tens of millions have just disappeared. This was once the place where rich people in Shenzhen fought to buy shops, hoping to get rich. Now it has become a big joke, a huge failure, and a painful lesson. Look around, it's completely empty. Today is Saturday and Sunday, but not a single person is here. Billions of yuan were invested here. It was once planned to be the biggest shopping center in South China, covering all kinds of businesses. But now, what you see is the sad reality of Shenzhen's business scene. Do you know how big this place is? Over 1 million square meters. About more than 1,000 acres. Tens of thousands of owners bought shops here. And now they've all become green leaks, meaning easy victims. 10 years ago, this place was full of people, very lively and crowded. Many of the shop signs you see now were put up 10 years ago. And after businesses closed, nobody even took them down. Look around, the whole place is closed and empty. Does anyone know where this is? If you know, leave a comment below. For shopping malls like this, Once the shops are sold to many small owners, it's almost impossible to keep them running well. They just can't survive on their own. Think about the popular shopping malls in Shenzhen 10 years ago. How many are still busy today? Almost all have faded away because Shenzhen's shopping centers change and update very quickly. As for the shops here, they are completely finished, no hope of saving them. If you're thinking about buying shops now, you must be very careful. Today, 80% of shops for sale in Shenzhen are bad deals.
Social inequality, the inverted T structure threatening stability. Social inequality in China is a ticking time bomb. According to Professor Li Chong from Tsinghua University, Chinese society resembles an inverted T, a massive population at the economic bottom, contrasted with a wealthy minority at the top. Only 20% of the population possesses real purchasing power, while 600 million people, as cited by former Premier Li Keqiang in 2020, live on approximately 100 RMB per month. Household debt has surged, reaching USD 11 trillion by 2024, with the debt-to-disposable income ratio exceeding 107%, a dangerous level comparable to that of the US before the 2008 financial crisis. Particularly concerning, 70% of urban household assets are locked in real estate, making them illiquid and limiting their contribution to actual consumption. This polarized social structure not only suppresses domestic consumption, but also heightens social tensions, from deepening poverty to increasing security issues. Tariff war, ordinary citizens bear the brunt. The US-China tariff war has devastated China's export-dependent economy, leaving millions of workers unemployed and forcing factories to shut down. In provinces such as Guangdong, Jiangsu, and Zhejiang, once vibrant manufacturing hubs, orders from the US have plummeted to near zero, with shipping containers now stacked like mountains at ports. A worker in Shenzhen lamented, "Our industry is finished. There are no jobs. Factories are shutting down for at least 3 months. How are we supposed to survive?" In Dongguan, known as the world's factory, 60% of the 14,000 enterprises rely on international trade, and the collapse in orders has led to widespread closures. The tariff war exposes the fragility of China's economic model. The tariff war has laid bare the fragility of China's economic model, heavily dependent on exports and lacking strong domestic demand. Malin Hai, the president of a garment company in Shenzhen, announced a shift to domestic sales via live streaming, slashing prices by 70% to clear inventory. However, the domestic market is already saturated, and redirecting exports risks triggering a price war, further squeezing profit margins. A factory worker in the Yangtze River Delta lamented, "All our orders have been cancelled. It feels like a financial crisis." Unemployment, estimated by some analysts to exceed 30–40%, is forcing workers to return to their hometowns, where job opportunities are equally scarce. Public criticism of Xi Jinping is mounting, with many calling him the master of accelerating the country's destruction. Online videos show mountains of unsold goods and abandoned factories, with one user commenting, "We can't sell to the US and no one else is buying either. Everything has come to a halt." The fallout from the tariff war highlights a harsh reality. Regardless of who wins, ordinary people are paying the price, facing unemployment, financial hardship, and an uncertain future. China's $700 billion zero-cents fake livestream empire, a culture of deception. China's live stream e-commerce sector, valued at 5 trillion RMB, approximately USD 689 billion in 2023, 20 times larger than its American counterpart, has become a pillar of the consumer economy. However, the booming sector is rife with fraud, where fake influencers hawk counterfeit goods and exploit emotional stories to drive sales. The industry's vast scale and lack of regulation have fostered a culture where deception is the norm, raising the troubling question: if everything can be faked, what remains real in China? In Shanghai's short video production hubs, influencers stage elaborate scenes in fake backdrops, university dormitories, hospital rooms, factory assembly lines to create appealing personas. Some rent private jets or luxury hotel rooms for a few hours to project an extravagant lifestyle, while others pose as struggling single mothers or poor farmers to evoke sympathy. Storylines promising 1 million views in 3 days are sold for as little as 6 RMB 60 cents, enabling influencers to fabricate compelling but false product narratives. High-profile scandals have revealed the depth of the deceit. Influencer Little Zhao, who gained fame with her hardship life live streams, claimed to be an 18-year-old orphan but was exposed as a 29-year-old woman, exploiting her mentally ill mother for sympathy. Her fabricated story generated millions of RMB in sales until her account was banned following a police raid in September 2024. Similarly, 19-year-old Liang Shun Dreams, who posed as a poor farmer, was found to be part of a mass production sales operation marketing fake organic products at exorbitant prices, generating 10 million RMB, USD 1.37 million annually. The collapse of Three Sheep Network, led by Xi'an, known as the Crazy Sheep Brothers, offers a stark example of industry instability. Boasting 1.2 billion followers on Douyin, the empire fell apart in 2024 after a feud with rival Jinba exposed widespread fraud, including selling fake Hong Kong machine mooncakes falsely advertised as Michelin quality. Priced at 169 RMB per box, the cakes were manufactured in Guangdong for just 59 RMB, containing no truffle or Michelin-endorsed ingredients as claimed. Additional allegations of counterfeit liquor and low-grade food devastated Chang's reputation, leading to a travel ban and highlighting the fragility of China's influencer-driven economy. The lack of robust regulation has allowed such fraud to thrive, eroding consumer trust and destabilizing an industry millions rely upon. As one online commenter noted, jobs, education, relationships, everything can be faked. The only real thing is the scam. Ambulances blocked and public apathy, a crisis of compassion. China's social challenges extend beyond economics, manifesting in alarming acts of public apathy that undermine public safety and human dignity. Incidents of ambulances being blocked have become distressingly common, often with tragic consequences. In Langfang, Hebei Province, an ambulance carrying an elderly patient was blocked for 8 minutes by a private car, despite sirens blaring. The patient later died after resuscitation attempts failed, with the family blaming the delay. In Chengdu, Sichuan Province, a woman refused to move her car at a traffic light, citing fear of license point deductions, delaying an ambulance by 17 minutes and resulting in another patient's death. She callously stated, "If someone dies in that ambulance, what does it have to do with me?" These incidents are not isolated but reflect a broader erosion of compassion within Chinese society. In one shocking case, a passerby ignored an elderly woman struck by a hit-and-run driver, merely moving her bicycle off the road and walking away without offering help. Even medical professionals have sometimes been implicated in this societal coldness, starkly contrasting scenes in Taiwan, where 50 cars once parted within 5 seconds during rush hour to clear a path for an ambulance, an act that received global praise for respecting life. Mainland netizens have begun questioning this disparity, asking, why do Taiwanese people show such concern for life, while in the mainland indifference prevails? Critics attribute this to decades of CCP rule, which they argue has severed traditional values like compassion and responsibility through propaganda, fear, and survivalist thinking. The 2006 Pengyu incident, where a young man was sued after helping an injured elderly woman, symbolizes this chilling effect. Despite no evidence of wrongdoing, Peng was forced to pay 45,000 RMB, USD 6 to 200, sparking outrage and a death sentence for kindness. Such cases have made helping others a risky endeavor, fostering a culture where self-preservation overrides empathy. Desperate homeowners vandalizing properties amid foreclosure waves. The collapse of China's real estate market, once the backbone of household wealth, has driven homeowners to acts of desperation. In the first 2 months of 2025, 172,000 properties were listed for foreclosure nationwide, but only 13.7% found buyers, according to the China Index Academy. In Shanghai, foreclosures are soaring as property values plunge, with some homes now worth millions of RMB less than their mortgage amounts. One homeowner in Gaojing Garden, who purchased at 100 RMB per ping in 2020, now faces a valuation of just 45 RMB per ping, choosing to default rather than continue payments. In extreme cases, defaulting homeowners have vandalized their properties ahead of auctions, venting frustration over their lost investments. In Fujian, homeowner Huang Leiyang smashed doors, windows, and fixtures, arguing that he had the right to destroy his own property. Legal experts warn that such actions violate China's civil procedure law and could result in fines or criminal charges, though the emotional toll is undeniable. One netizen wrote, "My mortgage is 3,700 RMB, USD 511 a month, and I still owe 640, RMB, USD 88500, but my house is only worth 540, I'm working every day just for the bank. What's the point?" Banks overwhelmed by 600,000 mortgage defaults in Q1 2025 are adopting lenient measures to avoid foreclosures, offering loan extensions, interest waivers, or even employment opportunities for defaulters, reflecting their desperation to manage 800 unsold foreclosed properties. As one insider put it, banks are begging people not to default. They're holding blocks of worthless concrete and steel. This crisis underscores how the property sector's collapse is depleting household wealth, exacerbating economic woes, and fueling public discontent. Manufacturing collapse. Factories shut down. Workers flee. Chinese manufacturing sector, once known as the world's factory, is in freefall, with factory closures sweeping across the Pearl River Delta and beyond. In Shantou, 1,000 denim factories declared bankruptcy in 2025, while giants like Red Star Macaline and Yiwu Furniture reported massive losses or went bankrupt. The National Bureau of Statistics reported a PMI of 49.1 in January 2025, signaling contraction, with industrial profits declining for 4 consecutive months. Workers are facing dire conditions, with 70% of factory owners in Shenzhen unable to pay wages. One worker said, "My factory shut down after 4 years, no orders, no profits." Factory owners, burdened by loans and unsold inventory, are selling equipment at fire sale prices or fleeing altogether, leaving unpaid wages and abandoned plants behind. The rise of Vietnam and India as manufacturing hubs, coupled with global tariffs, has redirected orders away from China, reducing the global footprint of made-in-China goods. The restaurant industry is also collapsing, with major chains and small eateries alike facing a cash flow crisis. In Chongqing, hot pot chains are selling off businesses, and storefronts remain vacant years after closures. One restaurant owner lamented, "Since Lunar New Year, not a single customer, total collapse." This widespread economic pain signals a potential restructuring of China's industrial landscape, with no clear path to recovery. Mounting pressure and a looming crisis. Under growing pressure, Premier Li Qiang called for stabilization efforts at a state council meeting on April 18, 2025, emphasizing the need to stabilize international trade, investment, stock markets, and real estate. Clear signs: Beijing fears the scale of the crisis. However, proposed economic stimulus measures, such as an additional RMB 1.5 trillion in financing for the second half of 2025, are viewed by experts as insufficient to reverse the downturn. Meanwhile, trade negotiations with the U.S. remain stalled. On April 17, 2025, President Trump stated that China had proposed resuming talks, but the CCP insisted it would not negotiate unless some tariffs were lifted. Beijing appears to be trying to regain the initiative by strengthening ties with Asian countries, but these efforts are faltering as nations like Vietnam pivot toward the U.S. China stands at a historic crossroads, with the twin blows of the trade war and deflation pushing its economy into an unprecedented crisis. The collapse of exports, the real estate plunge, soaring unemployment, and record economic protests all signal an economy out of balance. Meanwhile, issues like rampant counterfeiting, the Zhengzhou explosion, and COVID-19 controversies are amplifying domestic and international pressures. Vietnam's strategic shift toward the U.S. is a shock to the CCP, highlighting Beijing's failure to build a regional alliance against America. To escape this crisis, China needs deep structural reforms, raising household incomes, improving social welfare, reducing reliance on exports, and building an economy based on innovation and integrity. However, under an authoritarian political system and short-termist policies, China's path forward remains fraught with challenges. Without bold action, China faces not just an economic downturn, but a profound social and political crisis that could reshape the global order. The question remains, can China reclaim its future, or will it succumb to the weight of its own contradictions?